It became a dare to play this game.
Then one day, Men in Black took all the games away.
If something did design us, when are they going to shut us off? So you're recording my brain activity?
Yes.
My name is Christopher Garetano, and I've spent my whole life exploring the darkest mysteries on Earth. Following that passion, I made a film that helped inspire the hit series Stranger Things. Now I'm digging even deeper into our strange world.
Video games. They used to be considered child's play, but not anymore. More than 160 million Americans, roughly half the population, now have at least one gaming console in their homes. Not to mention all the action on our handheld devices. No wonder gaming has become even more popular than movies or television. I myself love playing vintage games like Mortal Kombat and Pac-Man, but as I get drawn deeper and deeper into the play, questions arise. Are these games pure entertainment, or are there darker forces at work? While we're exploring virtual worlds, are the games reprogramming our brains? And where is the line between computer code and human consciousness? Is our love affair with video games being used against us? I'm on a quest to find out. My investigation starts in 1981 with the urban legend of Polybius, said to be the most dangerous arcade game ever made.
We're on our way to talk to a guy named Logan. He runs a place called Quarter World. He was around back then, and he has a lot of insight on this story. Logan.
Hey.
Thank you so much for having me here, man.
No problem.
So tell me a little bit about the arcade scene in the early 80s.
Well, I mean, the early 80s, it was the golden age of arcade. Everywhere you went, there was arcades. People were playing until there's blisters on their fingers. It was nonstop. New games were coming out every week, and if you were an arcade provider or an operator at the time, you had to have the newest game.
Can you tell me what you know about Polybius?
The legend has it, it was around 1981. These unmarked cabinets started to appear like in the outskirts of the Portland metro area. It was supposedly a puzzle game. You were also a starfighter going through the cosmos trying to advance and shoot things. There's flashing lights going on. One of the things you hear about is it's not people being like, hey, I want to play this game. It became a dare. It became a dare to play this game. If you were to play it, you would develop night terrors, insomnia, and even extreme cases, you would have seizures. There was a boy that it happened to.
So the story goes that there were also, Men in Black type walking around the place, taking readings from the machines.
Yeah, they're coming in and checking on these specific games. And the interesting thing is they're not opening the front. They're not taking money out of them. They're opening up the back of the machines, where all the goody whats are. Well, that's where your circuit board is. That's where your power supply. And that's where all the other things you want to hide in a game is going to go.
If true, it sounds like Polybius could have been a government experiment, and that agents were regularly updating the content.
And after that boy had the seizure, that is when they came in and they swept up all the games in one fell swoop. And ever since that day, no one's been able to find a trace of it.
What's your personal view on it? Did it exist or didn't it?
There's a lot of stuff that really supports that it was out there. Look at the past government projects, MK Ultra.
MKUltra was a secret CIA program that ran from the 1950s to the early 70s. LSD and other drugs were forcibly administered to prisoners and mental patients in an attempt to control their minds. Could it be that the CIA found an easier way to brainwash people through flashing lights of a video game?
Parts of the US government were involved in several different weird programs meant to manipulate people's minds. These arcades are full of kids they would never suspect.
They'd be the perfect subjects. There was rarely adult supervision in these places, and with the players laser focused on the screens, it would have been pretty easy to study them without being noticed.
If we put something inside one of these games, it's not a far-fetched scenario that the government was and may still be involved in video games.
Oh, yeah. It's extremely plausible.
Do you know of anybody that knows where Polybius might be?
Every lead that I've ever gotten, I've exhausted. That's not to say there ain't someone still out there.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. I'm still gonna look into it.
Be careful what you turn up.
You know, the more I talk about Polybius, it seems to be in line with so many other government experiments. This would have been the perfect scenario in the early 80s to have tried to affect, unsuspecting video gamers coming here to play and thinking that this is an innocent thing and having a fun time. And yet another covert experiment could have been applied in this situation.
If only I could track down one of those game cabinets.
So I knew finding Polybius wouldn't be an easy task, and I think a logical approach would be to reach out on message boards. I'm hoping that someone can tell me that they know about Polybius, that they know it might exist, and I want to hear from skeptics too. So I am going to see what I find.
Brian Dunning is a science writer and host of a popular podcast called Skeptoid. He's convinced the legend of Polybius is complete fiction.
Give me your time.
Great to be here. I love talking about this stuff.
So, what you know of this? Where did this urban legend begin? Like, who was the first person to speak of Polybius?
The internet had appeared, and there was a catalog of arcade games, and someone created a record for one called Polybius. So it says, hey, does anyone know about this weird game supposedly in Portland, Oregon? The government was operating these machines and it was knocking kids out.
But do you believe that any of this is true?
There was this 12-year-old kid named Brian Morrow who was trying to set a record playing Asteroids, and he played for 28 hours straight. He drank Coca-Cola and played Asteroids for 28 hours.
Massive doses of sugar and caffeine.
Yeah, exactly.
That could easily explain the loss of consciousness. Brian thinks he can also debunk the story of G-men sneaking into arcades to reprogram their mind control games.
There were some arcades nationwide who the owners were putting counters on the machines so that when you got a high score, the arcade owner would give you a cash prize. Now, the FBI considered this illegal gambling. So they had FBI agents coming into Portland area arcades with cameras, taking pictures of the high score screens.
So this is the Men in Black idea?
Yeah.
Brian is not a believer, but then again, this convenient story about federal agents targeting 25-cent arcades only adds to my suspicion.
The idea that the government was just monitoring the cases for illegal gambling purposes could be spin, could be disinformation to distract from the fact that they really were monitoring Polybius.
Maybe the men in black only pretended to be hunting for gamblers, when in fact they were actually updating their machines and studying their unwitting subjects.
I mean, we know that the governments have black budgets. We know that there's classified research. And the only thing we know about what that research is that we don't know what it is.
Anytime I hear I'm about to speak to a skeptic, I get this tingle on the back of my neck, and it's not a comfortable feeling. But seemed to be a neutral guy, and he had a lot of insight, a lot of sober insight to the whole Polybius myth. Seems like the guy would consider believing it. He didn't completely rule it out, but he's not going to believe it without some proper evidence.
I'm heading back to my hotel to check if anyone's answered my gaming board post. So, I have some responses. And at the bottom, I have a post that says, "Hi, I think I know what you're referring to. Was at a storage locker a few months back. Inside were a bunch of old gaming cabinets. There was one game in particular that sounds like what you're referring to. And if you're interested in checking it out, yes, I am. He knows the owner. PM me, I can give you the address."
Can I see?
Yeah. So,
Is it far from here?
no, it's not. There's a chance, who knows? I mean, we might find Polybius tonight.
Let's go.
Let's do it. I'm on a mission to find out if the government is using our love of video games to control our minds. My investigation has brought me to Portland, Oregon. It's here a video game called Polybius allegedly showed up in several arcades in 1981 before vanishing a few months later. There are plenty of tantalizing stories out there about the government machines with flashing shapes taking hold of the players' minds. But is it true, or just a myth concocted by a bunch of suggestible teenagers? I've gotten a tip on a game forum from someone who claims to have spotted a Polybius game cabinet in a warehouse located on Portland's outskirts. This could be huge.
I honestly don't know what we're going to find in there, to tell you the truth. I'm very curious to see what's here.
He gave me the locker number. He said he'd leave it open for me.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
He left it unlocked. That's a little bit weird.
So, okay, I see a lot of video games, a lot of broken down cabinets. Seems like a graveyard. Here's a black cabinet, but that's not Polybius. And, yeah.
Let's try back there.
Can you get through?
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep going back.
Okay.
All right. I
Coming
see.
with you. This is like a maze.
Yeah. What is this?
See anything interesting?
No.
Do you think it's here?
Why would they want us to come here, right? You know, I mean, like maybe a piece of it still survives.
I wonder if someone found out we were coming and actually moved to Polybius.
I mean, could be hiding on us, but if it is here, I mean, you know, it would be quite a find if this thing was actually here.
After an hour of searching, we're out of luck. But there's actually one game here that's caught my attention.
What's this? This is interesting. Here's Battlezone. This was a game that was used to train tank drivers.
Battlezone?
Yeah, this is the game. You know, when people doubt that the government was involved in any kind of video game, this is actually a game that was used to train the army to drive tanks.
So Polybius could be real too.
Yeah. They actually use this, so I'm just saying there's truth in the legend just right here. But as far as I can see in this place, there's no full Polybius cabinet here. But it's worth checking out every lead we get.
I've arranged to chat with Nolan Bushnell, a member of the Video Game Hall of Fame and co-founder of Atari, the company that designed Battlezone.
I'm excited for this interview because Atari allegedly was involved with the government on Battlezone and maybe other games as well. And so that's really our focus with Polybius. It's trying to find out if the government had their hands in the development of the arcade games of the early 80s. And if they did,
What's their motivation? Were they trying to tap into the minds of our youths for some ominous purpose?
let's talk to him. Hello, Nolan.
Greetings.
Nice to see you. I'm Christopher.
Hi, Christopher.
So, can you tell me about your days at Atari? Any first-hand experience with any part of the government being involved in the development of a video game?
I was there when the government first did a little bit of testing. They were very interested in driving games and simulators so that they could use them to train, pilots and tank drivers.
I'm sure it made sense to the Pentagon. Why spend so much money on fuel and live rounds when you could teach the same skills on a video console?
I've heard all sorts of stories about all kinds of things over the years, but this one doesn't seem very far-fetched to me.
But ultimately, Atari didn't want its brand associated with actual killing, so they terminated the relationship.
It was quite controversial, and we didn't feel like it was good business to add to that controversy by violence.
So, do you think there's any truth at all to the legend of Polybius?
I actually do. I believe that it was atypical for a game to show up from nowhere. Nobody knew who manufactured it. Nobody knew from whence it came. And for it to be kind of a bizarre thing. So, building a video game of any type at that time probably cost at least $500,000 of research, if not $1 million. And this game kind of showed up from nowhere. And that's very suspicious all by itself.
At the time you were developing games for Atari, did you ever think about how it might affect the player in maybe some adverse way?
Any powerful technology has a potential to addict. And I think that sometimes, just like alcohol and drugs, people overdo them.
Hearing this and hearing it from you, firsthand experience, credible experience, I just don't believe that Polybius was any kind of far-fetched legend.
A lot of these research things that are really on the edge of what's possible or might be possible sound either silly or far-fetched, and then later on prove that it was true.
Wow. So much to think about.
Yep.
Nolan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated it. So there you have it. This is one of the original co-founders of Atari, and he believes that Polybius existed.
If he's right, and the government was running mind control experiments through video games, you have to wonder what's become of that technology in the last 3 decades. Is video game addiction an unintended consequence of too much screen time, or something far more menacing?
I couldn't really think straight, and I wasn't sure what I was doing.
They were sending people knocking on the door.
I haven't found any hard evidence yet to prove that Polybius actually existed. However, I'm still obsessed with the possibility that the government was, and maybe still is, using video games to brainwash unsuspecting players.
Polybius allegedly caused seizures, night terrors, and completely warped the minds of the player.
Today, so many young people are also suffering debilitating side effects, all because of their almost chemical dependency on gaming.
I need to speak to people who are affected by technology and video games in this way, so I've come to Restart.
Located in Bellevue, Washington, it's the nation's first rehabilitation center for people addicted to video games and technology.
So, the basis of my quest is there is an urban legend about a game called Polybius. This game was so addictive. Not only that, they say that this was on purpose. It was deliberate. It was actually designed by a covert government program to affect the mass population. So I wonder if that was true. Could it have been carried on into the home gaming systems? And would it be applied to any of the games you may have played?
Oh, there's no doubt that games are engineered to be addictive and get you hooked on them. I spent 8 months not caring about anything but playing games. I wouldn't leave my apartment for days on end. I would basically get up, play games, eat maybe once a day, go back to sleep, repeat every day. I only showered when I couldn't bear how bad I smelled. I weighed 120 pounds.
I started gaming this first year of college, really good school. I started staying in my dorm room for weeks on end. They were sending people knocking on the door to make sure I was okay, and I ended up taking a leave of absence from that school.
See, it's amazing. It mimics, an addiction to a really, potent narcotic. It's very similar in a way. The way it takes you over and the way it destroys your social life.
It's so much. It's like all these things, like real life, compared to video games. Like real life was boring. It was so boring. Like my parents were like, "Hey, do you want to go to London?" And I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, no. Because walking around London looking at all these boring buildings and landmarks there weren't video games there, so it was boring.
That idea of everybody being absorbed by this, because it's so attractive, you could be anything you want in that world. Do you think that the designers and the programmers of these games are well aware of what it's going to do to you, or what it did to you?
I think it's feasible.
They have psychologists on staff.
Okay, see, that's what I really want.
That their games are hitting all the right triggers.
Like this idea that eventually in the future it'll hook up to you, like your brain, and then you just go straight into it. You can touch, you can feel, you can taste. And then at that point, then why would people want to come into the real world?
There are those that believe, and this has been written about in science fiction many times throughout the years, that this was all a plan. Like once the technology got to a certain quality, now it's going to take us over. And perhaps we'd even change, So for me, listening to this, and again, it's putting it all in perspective for me. So the concept of Polybius as like phase one, if you were to believe that it evolved, the idea of mind control, and what is that? I mean, we think right away this direct hypnotic suggestion to make you do this horrible thing right away, but maybe mind control is more of like this captive, hold on your attention. Let's improve the technology and let's get them addicted to this, and it will keep people docile and in their imaginary world and away from the real world where they might be a challenge. This is a much larger epidemic than I imagined before this conversation. I mean, it seems like the mind control is in the design for one reason or another. And I wonder if there's a larger mastermind behind all of this.
The game designers certainly know they're shaping players' minds, but who else is pulling the strings? We're in Los Angeles, California to speak to hypnotherapist Erin Vasquez. I'm hoping she can explain exactly how video games can take over our minds. So we've been exploring the topic of suggestion through video games, and I know that your expertise is hypnotherapy, a form of mind control.
Right.
So how does hypnosis work?
What I do is I assist the client in getting into a state where they aren't being run by their conscious mind. And at a certain point, I will start inserting suggestions directly to their unconscious mind.
You're manipulating people in a positive way.
I help them adopt beliefs at both a conscious and unconscious level. So these are really powerful tools.
I spoke to a few gentlemen at a place called Restart.
Okay.
Where they're rehabilitating from excessive use of video games and technology.
Wow.
And it's more severe than I had imagined.
Okay.
Why are these people having that adverse reaction to it in such a way where as if they are hypnotized?
There's certain technologies that become addictive. What happens is they are going into a trance. We're in trances all day. When you've lost a half hour scrolling through your phone, you've been in a trance.
It seems that the game itself could be implanting suggestion into them.
Yeah.
My question is, through video games, can the inverse happen? Can the technology hypnotize people? And can it deliberately be put in that technology?
Absolutely. And if you're constantly in front of a game, there's way more information being fed to your unconscious mind per second, and there's no way that you can filter through it. Your defenses are down. And if it's being installed at an unconscious level, there's no way to know.
If Erin's right, gamers' brains could be open to all sorts of suggestion, and they wouldn't even know it. Based on all the information I've collected about Polybius, the mythical video game was believed to keep its players mesmerized by geometric patterns and colorful shapes. Is it possible they were being hypnotized right there in the middle of the arcade?
Let's play out a scenario. How would you design a way to hypnotize somebody for a game like Polybius? Would you use music? Would you use lights? Would you use...
All of the above.
Okay.
There's anchors. I think the visuals would be very mesmerizing, but what you're banking on with video games is the repetition. The more that person plays, the easier it will be to induce them. They'll immediately be in that place where it's really easy to insert suggestions at a certain point. Think about it, like when you're driving down the street, you're actually in a trance. So your barriers are down, and billboards are really effective, hypnotizing you at an unconscious level.
Right, it's done in advertising, it's done in...
Everywhere.
Politics, the news.
Yeah. So if anyone who wanted to make the video game and add in their agenda, it's entirely possible. Yeah.
See, what's important is that Erin believes 100% that it's possible to insert this type of hypnosis into games and technology. Even if Polybius itself didn't exist, that there was this covert, hidden in plain sight operation.
There is no denying this mass effect from the video game to the people playing them. They could be affecting the way we think and what we believe unconsciously. As video games get more and more sophisticated,
the line between digital code and human consciousness can get blurry. One company in Boston is trying to erase that boundary completely.
I'm about to speak to a man named Dr. Ramses at Neurable. It's a lab that developed a technology where the player itself can now control the world, can move things with their mind, like telekinesis. I've read about these things since I was a kid in science fiction, and now it's real. I can't wait to try it.
So tell me about Neurable.
Yeah, Neurable is a brain-computer interface company, which is a fancy way of saying that we allow people to control devices with their brain activity. I worked with children who had severe cerebral palsy and people with ALS, and our main goal was to enable them to have a form of communication. And the system that we're going to show you today actually uses that type of technology. So instead of picking up a controller, you can interact with devices, your technology around you, but using your brain activity, like as if you had telekinesis.
You have nothing but the best intentions with the technology, but what if it got into the hands of somebody who didn't, with the intent to suggest or even control the mind of the person using it?
I mean, whenever new technology is developed, there is always different ways that people are going to use it. And the way to think about it is actually look away from the brain itself, right? It's very easy for us to control the game with our hands, but it's very difficult for the game to control our hands.
Well, I'm excited to see what you've made.
It's definitely the most advanced system in the world for what we're doing. Welcome to our tech lab. This is a virtual reality system up in the front. And in the back, we have these systems here that record your brain activity.
Okay, so you're recording my brain activity?
Yes.
Okay, but there's nothing to worry about, right? Here we go.
I haven't found proof that Polybius existed. No pictures, no trademarks, no old game files. But my search for it has shown there's a very real reason to fear the influence video games are having on our lives. They're literally rewiring our brains, making us dependent on them like some sort of modern-day lotus eaters. But in Boston, there's a groundbreaking new technology that puts the human mind back in the driver's seat.
We record your brain activity.
But there's nothing to worry about, right?
Hearing so many stories about the way Polybius and other video games affected the minds of the player has me on edge. But it's led to this singular moment. My opportunity to manipulate the gaming system. In this virtual reality experience, it's not your head movement or eyes that controls gameplay. It's your actual brain waves. Sensors on the back of my scalp detect areas of greater activity, and if I think hard enough, I can make things happen, almost like telekinesis.
All right, let's start the adventure. You are escaping a government facility, and all you have is your telekinetic powers. It's an escape the room game with your brain.
This is not a test. You need to escape from here. Remember, your new powers allow you to perform actions using your mind.
So there's objects on the ground. Feel free to focus on one of them, and it should come to you as soon as you want it.
I did.
And then focus on one of those green circles, and as soon as you consciously want it, it should activate. And that's a code that you can actually use to escape your cell. There is no timers or anything like that. As soon as you consciously want it, we're able to actually do the action. In this next section, you have to battle robots using your brain activity. So just focus on what you want to throw, consciously want it, and you should be able to trigger the action. And then these lasers are actually coming at you, and you can transform them using your brain activity. Good job. This next section, this dog is going to come to attack you, and you have to use your telekinetic powers to transform him.
That's ridiculous.
Good job. Look at that. There you go. You just played a game with your brain.
Wow. That is strange.
Where is all of this going?
This is the first natural form of human telekinesis. The way we see it working is as technology becomes more mobile, so you're wearing a pair of glasses, for example, that have built-in displays, you can now control them using your mind.
So, okay, eventually you'll have those telekinetic powers as opposed to using a controller to operate something.
Exactly.
I'm just blown away. Seeing through a window into the future, like where this could go, what the possibilities are with it. It's just occurring to me what can be done and what will be done with this. So I'm blown away. That was weird. My imagination is running wild right now, to tell you the truth. It's amazing. You know, the future I imagined and read about as a child is happening right now. It feels like the very beginning of something that is going to be all over the world. It will be in every home, and there's going to be so many uses for it that are positive and beneficial. But, you know, my imagination always goes to what villain could get their hands on this technology and use it for their own purposes, because I know of government programs and technologies that did exist for nefarious purposes. I started this mission by exploring the legend of Polybius. But my investigation has led me down an unexpected path to question the future of gaming and the very nature of our existence. As I've discovered, video game technology could become so immersive, you might no longer be able to distinguish the virtual world from reality. Is it possible we're player characters living inside a game simulation? We are about to talk to a guy named Jim Elvidge. He's a futurist, technologist. He has a master's degree in electrical engineering. More importantly, he's an author, and he's written about a real wild idea. Do you believe that it's possible that games themselves are manipulated by some parts of the government for the purposes of mind control?
There could be a nefarious mind behind the video game creation, absolutely. Could the government have been behind it? I wouldn't put it past them. You know, I know the government has been involved in secret projects, you know, mind control experiments and things like that, but it's all within our apparent physical reality. What I'm talking about is something deeper.
You wrote a book. It's kind of a wild theory, but some very brilliant minds believe it to be true. Can you tell me about your book and what this theory is?
The first one was called The Universe Solved. My theory is deep down, our reality is digital. It starts to sound like The Matrix. It starts to sound like something like that.
You believe we are living in a simulation right now?
Yeah, so the word simulation is a very charged word. To me, a simulation conjures up something artificial. Do I believe that we're living in a construct that is programmable, that is malleable, that we can play out simulations and things like that? Yeah, I do.
Who is in control of the digital simulation? I can't prove a game called Polybius existed, but my investigation has convinced me that video games control our minds, maybe intentionally. Now my quest has taken me in a surprising direction, to question the future of gaming and the very nature of our existence. What if we're all living inside a game simulation?
Deep down, our reality is digital. It starts to sound like The Matrix. It starts to sound like something like that.
I'm meeting with Jim Elvidge, a futurist and author with a mind-blowing theory. Who is in control of the digital simulation?
So there are a lot of theories on this. In the simulation theory space, there are ideas like it's us in the future that created these simulations that we're living in. That's Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk believe that.
Elon Musk says that the idea of a simulation is very real, and that the games we play might be completely indistinguishable from reality.
There are others that believe the universe was created by a physicist hacker, from another planet. So maybe it's an alien, or it was an AI that created the whole thing. I think it's more of a big system of information. That's all that there is in, I don't even want to use the word universe, because what we think of as the universe is just in this, quote, simulation.
So our entire solar system, our galaxy, billions of other solar systems and galaxies that are out there are all part of this simulation then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some might listen to this and think that we're just like, some kind of sim program, like we're just digits.
It doesn't mean it's not, that life isn't beautiful, or that a rose doesn't smell good, or that you can't feel emotions. It's not a cold calculating thing like we're a program running in a laptop. We're talking about the deep, deep nature of reality here.
I think it would scare a lot of people. I think it would terrify a lot of people.
I think it's more terrifying to think it's lights out when you die. But the idea that there's something else, that your consciousness lives on, is actually very enlightening.
The idea that we're living in some kind of computer program, some kind of alien imagination, I'm blown away. Are we living inside the mind of some kind of higher intelligence? When Jim says that we're part of some kind of computer program, I think we're all thinking that we're in a hard drive somewhere, and it's not very attractive. Almost like we have no personality, that we're just designed by somebody else's brain. If something did design us, when are they going to shut us off? I wonder what's next for us. I've played video games my whole life, and I've long suspected there's more to them than just mindless fun. I can't prove a mood-altering game called Polybius existed, but I've met people hopelessly addicted to modern gaming. It leaves me convinced these games are designed to enslave people's minds. Why? I don't know yet. Dr. Ramses at Nuremberg gave me a glimpse into a world where brain waves themselves are actually measured and harnessed. But what scares me the most is that we might already be inside a game, is the theory that some alien intelligence or even the government has created us. So next time you play a video game, think twice, because the game might be playing you.